Hey guys, welcome back to Olivia's Blooms. Today I'm going to share with you all of the cool season hardy annual flowers that I'm going to be growing this year. It is January and it's almost already time for me to start my cool season hardy annuals, which I'm so excited about. And I'm only going to go over the cool season flowers in this video. I'll save the warm season annuals and flowers that I'll be starting from seed until later in the year, probably start those early March maybe. And that's because there's a lot of things I'll be growing and that would be a very long, probably very boring video. So first thing, I'm gonna show you how I save and organize my seeds, if you can call this an organization system. I have dreams of upping my game when it comes to the seed saving and organizing, but this works for now. And what I do is when I order seeds, I save the biggest envelopes because sometimes you order a lot of seeds, you know, that's okay. And you can see this one's from Baker Creek. I have envelopes from Johnny's Seeds, Redemption Seeds, all my favorite seed companies. And I organize and I save them according to cool season or warm season, and then I split that into two, and I do cool season direct sown flowers in one envelope and cool season start indoors and transplant out seeds in another envelope. Now, if I wanted to take it a step further, and I do hope to do this someday, I would then organize these seeds further into when I'm going to plant them. So for example, if this was my cool season hardy annual direct sown flowers, some of them will say direct sow 2 weeks before your last frost or as soon as the ground can be worked. And so I'd split them out then so that I know exactly what goes first, what goes second, and so on. I also have on my calendar on my computer just the time frame of when my average last frost is, and then working back from there, what's 4 weeks before my last frost, and so on. Just a quick note about the cool season hardy annuals. I follow Lisa Mason Ziegler and I've used her method for planting out in very early spring, which means I'm going to be planting out my cool season hardy annuals, and those are annuals that can withstand hard frosts and can overwinter in my area. I'm in Charlottesville Zone 7B, but you're gonna plant those out actually 6 to 8 weeks before your average last frost. Our average last frost here is April 10th. And so for me, that ideal planting out for my cool season hardy annuals is actually February 14th and the following 2 weeks after that. So very early, and it seems very counterintuitive to be planting things out that early, but we can do that here. And I had really good success doing that last year. So I have already planted out some cool season hardy annuals last fall, and I have some videos about what I planted and how they're looking, and I'll link those below. And those are the easiest spring flowers because you plant them in the fall and then in spring you don't have to do a thing. But some of these I'm going to be planting either in early spring because it's more risky that they'll survive the winter, or I'm also going to be planting some of the same things again in spring so that I have a succession. And I also like to experiment and see how they do for flowers in my specific area, in my specific microclimate, so that I can compare, does it make sense for me to plant them in the fall, or do they do better if I plant them in very early spring? The more I can plant in the fall though, the better, because it's easier on me and there's less to do in the spring. And you might be wondering, why are we planting these out so early? Well, here in Charlottesville, Virginia, in my area, the weather goes from cool to very hot very quickly. And so it's harder for us to grow some of these flowers and plants that like cool weather because they don't get a lot of long, cool months of 60-degree temperatures. And so by giving them an early start, usually they do better and they have time to bloom and flourish before the heat kind of takes them. And Lisa Mason Ziegler explains this very well on her channel. So now that we've gone over all of that information, let's get to the flowers. So the first set of seeds I'm gonna go over are my Cool Season Hardy annuals that I will be direct sowing. So I'm not gonna go over the food I'll be growing, I'm just gonna be going over the flowers. But something I'm very excited about is Pink Beauty Saponaria, and I'll put up a picture of what that looked like last year. And this is a beautiful pink filler flower, also known as soapwort. And actually, I planted this, it didn't do very well when I planted it in a little bit later spring last year, so I'm gonna try it a little bit earlier, but I believe the one I planted last year that I let go to seed direct sowed itself all over the place. And so I'm excited to potentially have more saponaria if it can survive the next couple months. The next flower I'm gonna direct sow is Russian Status. And I saw some of these on Instagram and just fell in love. What a beautiful spike flower. And I had really good germination and growth with my regular Status. So I'm interested to see how the Russian Status does. And I think this will also make a beautiful dried flower. And I'm trying to up my dried flower game as well. I also am gonna start direct sow some Cotton Candy Status. Again, for some more fun dried flower, but also filler. Last year, I did not grow enough filler, and so that's one of my goals for this year. Another filler flower I'm going to direct sow is Cress, and I did not have good luck with this at all last year. It did not grow in the spot that I direct sowed it in early spring. It did not overwinter for me, so I'm gonna give it one more try in a different spot this spring and see if I can get it to grow, because I really want those beautiful green, beady looking spikes. Another flower that this is gonna be my last try, and these are actually perennial or biennial. I have two types of lupin. I have the Russell Lupin Chatelaine Pink and the Russell Lupin Chandelier Yellow. I, again, tried to transplant these in the fall. I got great germination in my soil blocks, and as soon as I transplanted them out, they immediately died. It was a huge heat wave, so we struggle with lupins here this far south, and I have tried buying them already grown on, but I just love those spikes so much that I'm giving them more chances probably than they deserve. I also am going to be growing some Bupleurum. Lisa Mason Ziegler recommends planting these in the fall, and she's very close as well to my area, and so I usually try whatever she does and her methods as my first attempt. But I did direct sow these in the fall and did not have great germination. These are notoriously hard to germinate. So I'm going to try them again in the spring, and this is another beautiful, bright filler flower. You can tell that I'm really trying a lot of filler, more filler this year. Here's some saponaria seed that I saved as well. And that is it for the flowers that I'm going to be direct sowing. And I'll be doing that for most of these around, I'll start February 14th to look at the forecast and probably wait and see if there's a day before we're gonna get some rain, just to help keep the seeds moist in the soil. And watch the temperatures as well and make sure there's not gonna be a hard frost either during or immediately after I direct sow those. So it's a little bit of play it by ear, but that's why it's good to have a 2-week window to give yourself time. Now on to what plants am I going to start in my basement. And again, you have to time this out. So direct sowing is a little bit easier. You just go outside and sow them in the ground when it's that planting time. For the ones I'm starting indoors, I have to count back from when I want to plant out. So let's say February 14th is my very early spring planting time. I have to count back from how long these need to grow on in my basement before they're ready to transplant. Now, because I'm doing soil blocking, the seeds actually grow and turn into healthy transplants much quicker. So I usually shorten the time a little bit. So something that says 6 weeks in maybe a seed tray Usually 4 to 5 weeks is plenty of time in a soil block. And so I'll take that into consideration when I mark on my calendar what seeds I need to start. And I'll take you guys along with me as well and show you how I start in soil blocks. So what I'm gonna be starting inside, I have some snapdragons. I have Costa Summer Lavender Snapdragons, Chantilly Light Salmon, and all of these I also have out in my garden right now overwintering. We'll see how they do. My cat has been sleeping on top of them, so I don't know that they'll be able to survive the winter, but that's why I also start some in spring. And the ones I started in spring last year did beautifully, so I'm really overwintering some as an experiment. I am also going to be starting a lot of sweet peas, and I just loved having sweet peas last spring. And these I'm going to be starting in root trainers, and these are probably the first seeds I'm going to start. And I'm gonna give them 6 weeks before I'm gonna be planting them out in February. And that for me is the first week of January. So I have a bunch that I saved from last year. I haven't even taken them out of the pods yet. I still have to do that. But I have some in an envelope here. And I wasn't careful about marking which came from which plant because I'm gonna mix them all up. But sweet pea seeds are true to their mother plant. So I'm gonna have a mix of Valerie Herod, which is a pink, Richard and Judy, which is a purple, and the Blue Shift, which is a turquoise. It turns from like a light blue to a beautiful turquoise. And I have lots of pictures I'll put up on the screen of what those look like. But I'm also trying a Prince of Orange that looked gorgeous, and the sweet peas I grew last year that I'll be growing again almost have like a neon quality, and so I thought the orange would be a nice addition to that almost neon looking bouquet. So I'm very excited about the sweet peas. They did really well for me. I also, again, making sure I have some good dried flowers. I have a Silvery Rose straw flower and a Vintage White straw flower. And I wanted more white because this time of year, actually, I'm using a lot of white and pink straw flowers for some of my more Valentine's Day winter decor. I also am going to grow again the Madame Butterfly Bronze Snapdragon, which was beautiful. I am probably going to do the straw flower mix again because the monster mix, those big, beautiful heads, I like having a lot of different colors. I got mostly reds and oranges and a couple yellows this year, so I'm hoping I can get some different colors from the mix. I have Shades of Blue Larkspur. Now, Larkspur is another one that does really well in our area. We have trouble growing delphiniums. I think they like it cooler and do better more north, but the Larkspur, which has the same sort of spiky look, is fantastic. And I have the QIS mix and the salmon already outside overwintering, but I wanted to add this beautiful blue color. I'm gonna be trying some Zeolites calendula. I have never grown calendula before. I tried last year and I threw some seed out and didn't really pay attention to it, and it did not germinate, but I think that'll be pretty. I already have overwintering some yarrow, but I'll probably start some more. And what I'm gonna do with these, yarrow is perennial in my area, and so I'm gonna grow them on inside, and I'm actually gonna plant them out in my flower bed so that I constantly have that filler every year. It is a mix, so I might cull for the colors that I prefer just because I don't want too much variety of color in my garden beds. I want that to be a little more intentional. But in my cut flower beds, a mix is perfect. I'm also going to be growing my stock. I do have that overwintering. Lisa Mason Ziegler recommends spring planting stock. She did not have good luck with overwintering. I still tried it as an experiment because, again, every little microclimate's different, but I'm gonna also grow mine in the spring. They did not do well for me in the spring last year. I'm gonna give them another shot. I have the Iron Pastel mix, Cat's Ruby, and Cat's Cherry Blossom. I also have more Snapdragon Potomac mix, which was really fun and did well for me. And I have a whole video of how those did and what they looked like last summer. And then the last thing I'm gonna do, which is not seeds, but it is a Cool Season Hardy annual, and I have this little bag to remind me, but I'm going to be pre-sprouting 2 weeks before February 14th my ranunculus and anemone corms that I saved from last year, and I'll put some pictures up of those. The blue star anemones were the favorite. Everybody loved them. They did really well for me. I bought another dozen of those because I only had about a dozen. Now I did experiment in my lasagna bed with overwintering some of those corms as well, so we'll see how they do, but I want to guarantee that I'll have some ranunculus and anemones because they were the showstopper spring flowers for me. So I will be also pre-sprouting them here very soon. So thank you for going through all the flowers I'm going to be growing this year, the cool season flowers, and I will take you guys along with me so you can see how I start them, both inside and how I direct sow them outside, and we'll see how they do. Fingers crossed we have a lot of success, a lot more filler flower this year. But I know I get really excited just imagining all the things I'll be growing this year, and I hope you guys had as much fun reviewing everything as I did. Thanks. Now, Lisa Mason Ziegler recommended, when I order seeds, I save the biggest envelopes. Pardon my dog. But do you mind?